The Prowler, Part 1. Recently, a chest was found in the attic at Burlington Manor, the ancestral home of one of the oldest surviving houses of nobility. What was found in said chest, though, has sent shockwaves throughout the world, England, and the Burlington family itself. Inside, a journal was found, amongst other things, belonging to a Lord Neville Burlington, and the contents of its entries will shed a light and reveal the identity of the West End Prowler, and finally reveal the fate of the first famous serial killer of notoriety. These are some of its entries. The date is September 18th, 1888. The headline from the morning paper reads, "Grisly Murder." I stood on the sidewalk and read the story, fresh in hand, to check if they got all the details correct. This is a momentous occasion for me. It is my first murder, after all. Let's see here. Early this morning, a constable by the name of Richard Wilkins happened upon the lifeless body of a young woman who was unknown at the time, but thanks to my hard work and crafty reporting, I am able to report her identity as being a one Miss Belinda Caswell, 20 years old, and described as a woman of the night. Her body was found face up on the corner of Denmark Street in the West End of London. Her throat was slashed from ear to ear, and her eyes, tongue, and ears were removed. Further details will be reported as I'm made aware of them. Scotland Yard to release statement later in the afternoon. One thing is for certain. Whoever this madman is, he is no match for the inspectors of Scotland Yard. I'm sure I will be reporting his apprehension shortly. Till tomorrow, dear readers. A silent rage moved throughout my body as I stood on the cobblestone street, hands tightly gripping the paper. Madman, I thought. I'm no fucking madman. On the contrary, I'm quite sane. Who wrote this filth? Ah, Mr. Reginald Barker. Well, I think I might be paying you a visit shortly. I crumbled that printed filth into a ball and threw it to the ground. Wait till they get a load of me, I thought. I'm going to paint the streets of the West End red, soaked in the blood of the innocent. I will be the most feared terror that stalked these streets since the Black Plague. I moved through the crowd of filth, thinking to myself every one of them deserves to die, choking on their own blood after they've tasted my blade. I spot a few potential victims as I shoved my way through the rubble, as I maneuvered myself towards my waiting carriage. Once in, I told James to make haste towards home, for I had another evening to prepare for. I ate dinner with the family, then secluded myself in my chambers until it was time to depart for the West End. I spent those next few hours updating this journal that will document my journey of carnage, and then preparing my kit: surgical knife, hatchet, chloroform, and a small hand pistol, just in case, were all snugly packed into my black bag. I retrieved my top hat and cloak and made my way down to the carriage, where I told James to drive me to the West End. Once there, I told James to sit there and wait with the carriage while I go out and walked. As I headed down Denmark Street again, I was interested to see if there would be an increased presence of constables patrolling the streets, and there was not. I laughed to myself, thinking even Scotland Yard doesn't give two shites about the common filth of the West End. And that hack of a reporter thinks they'll get the best of me. What rubbish. They're not even here. These are my streets to stalk freely. At first, I thought the night to have been a waste. There wasn't a soul to be seen the first half hour I was out. Then a low fog started to move down the street. Just as it started to get thick, I spotted a couple walking down an alleyway. I quickly followed, blending into the thick, soupy fog. I watched for a few moments as the man pushed the woman up against the wall and started kissing her. I quickly sat my bag down and pulled out the large surgical knife. As the man began to suckle on the woman's neck, I jumped from the fog, not uttering a word. I grabbed the man by the shoulder and spun him towards me. I sliced my blade across his groin, and he fell over, writhing in pain. I then placed my hand around the woman's throat and sliced my blade across it. I collected my trophies and left them there to bleed out. I clung to the shadows as the fog began to lift and made my way back to the carriage, where I then returned home without further incident. The next morning, I eagerly went to fetch the early edition of the paper to read of my further exploits. The headline read, "Murderer Strikes Again." Real original headline, Reginald, I smugly thought. Let's see what he has to say this time. Another gruesome scene was happened upon in an alleyway on Denmark Street in the early hours this morning. This time a young couple, a Ralphie Johnson and a Mrs. Abigail Johnson, were found butchered by a street sweep at approximately 5 o'clock this morning. Mr. Johnson was found laying on his side, lying in a mass pool of blood, his privates reportedly being removed, causing him to bleed out and slowly dying from loss of blood. Mrs. Johnson was found sitting up against the wall next to her husband, her head hanging to the side. Her throat had been sliced open, and eyes, tongue, and her ears were all removed, just as the previous victim. That's 3 victims now in 2 nights. I, for one, am appalled by this sick deviance, barbarism. This madman must quickly be stopped. I will be pressuring Scotland Yard for information and to bring this butcher to justice swiftly, as my readers demand it. Who is this man who stalks our streets and prowls our alleyways? Who is the mysterious West End prowler? Till tomorrow, dear readers. Oh, Reginald, you belittle me once again. But what a name, I thought to myself, as I made my way through the crowd. Later that afternoon, I sat in my study and composed a letter to send to the paper. It was time to introduce myself to the world. The letter read, "I am the one who has brought fear to your streets. I live in the shadows. I move through your streets like a swift, deadly breeze, never to be seen. Try all you like, but I will never be caught, for I am the merchant of death, the bringer of pain. Welcome to a dawning of true terror, for I am the Prowler." I sat down the pen and prepared for tonight. I have an appointment with a certain newspaper writer. Reginald, tonight, you're mine.